Hello everyone and welcome back to another episode of FPL Fanzone. And today's episode we are going to cover the biggest game week of the season. Game week 33, 4 teams are doubling. It's the biggest week of the whole season and we are going to look at everything. Players to target, we're going to look at the pitfalls to watch out for. We're going to look at whichever chip strategy you're on, whether it's bench boost, triple captain, free hit or assistant manager. It's going to be a huge swing week for players and we want to make sure that we cover all angles, whichever strategy that you're on, we've got you covered. Also, don't forget to join the FPL Fanzone League, mini league. The code is on the screen. Current leader is only 2 points ahead of second place at the moment, so it's super tight at the top. And the winner will get a Premier League shirt of their choice at the end of the season. So it's still super tight at the top there, only 2 points in it. So don't forget to hit like if you see anything that gives you some value in this episode. Hit subscribe if you're new around here. It really does help out the channel. And hit that notification bell if you want updates for any future videos coming out as well. But without further ado, let's get started. Okay, so game week 33, the biggest game week of the season. We have 4 teams that are doubling. Man City, Aston Villa, Arsenal and Crystal Palace. So Man City have their Everton away and then Aston Villa at home. And then Arsenal have Ipswich away and then Crystal Palace at home. Aston Villa obviously start with Newcastle at home and then are away to Man City, and Crystal Palace have Bournemouth at home and then are away to Arsenal. So with the extra fixtures this week, obviously that gives us some easy players to target. So let's have a quick look at some of the challenges we've got now in terms of how many doublers do we want in this week, bearing in mind that game week 34, all of those 4 teams won't be playing. So unless you've got a free hit or a wild card still available to change your team next week, you've got to be able to balance how many double game week players you've got this week versus players that are not going to be playing next week. So let's have a quick look at some of the players to target. Okay, first up, Crystal Palace. And wow, what a decline. Before the last week's double game week for them, they were on a 3-game winning streak. They looked like they were in really good form, both defensively and attackingly, and having 3 of those players felt like a really good option. Obviously in game week 32, they got thumped twice. So even if you had, I had 3 of them, and I got 2 points from Henderson, I got 2 points from Mateta. I did get 7 points from Sarr, but it was just not great for a double game week. You expect at least 4 points from every player that plays because you're going to get 2 appearance points. But because they were so poor and conceded so many goals that they was getting minus points for the defenders and goalkeepers, Mateta was benched and just didn't get the points on there as well. So yeah, it was a tough week for Crystal Palace. Now if you've already got them in your team, of course you hold them for this week. They've got another double. It's not an easy one with Bournemouth and Arsenal. So it's not another. The Bournemouth game should be a little bit easier because Bournemouth have been out of form themselves. So hopefully that some of these players will find a bit of a form. But realistically, if you can look here across the form guide for all of these players now, 1.8, 2.2, 2.8. Eze with 4.2, but he didn't really do much over the double either. So for me, I wouldn't necessarily look at potentially buying them, especially if you don't have a way to free hit in game week 34. But for my team, I already have Henderson, Sarr and Mateta, and I'm just going to keep them and hold them for this week and look at potentially transferring them out after my free hit, so in game week 35. So with Crystal Palace, hold them if you've got them. Not necessarily excited about particularly buying any of them because you've already missed one of their doubles. So the value for them was having 4 games in 2 weeks. And then obviously potentially moving off to those afterwards. So let's have a quick look at some of the other teams. Next up, Arsenal. Now Arsenal are on a huge high at the moment, obviously after going through to the Champions League semi-finals, beating Real Madrid over 2 legs. The challenge is with Arsenal at the moment is they've got no strikers. So we've got Mikel Merino, who's playing out of position. as a midfielder playing as the number 9 for Arsenal. But the form guide here isn't great again. If you look at in the league, they drew with Brentford. There may be a hangover potentially from that Real Madrid game after, like there was the week before. They do have the easiest double of everyone this week with Ipswich away and then Crystal Palace at home, given that Ipswich are in the relegation zones and almost certain likely to be relegated, if not this week, next week. And Crystal Palace, obviously, just their form in the last 2 games. You do feel like there's a lot of goals potentially to be had by this Arsenal team. It's just where are they coming from? If you're going for outside picks, you could look at someone like an Odegaard or Trossard potentially. Martinelli's has obviously found a little bit of form in the Champions League scoring. But Bukayo Saka, obviously he's been out for injury for 3 months. He's come back and his minutes have been managed either side of the Real Madrid games. Now, he did play 90 minutes midweek, but I don't foresee that now being an issue moving forward, and I do expect him to start in both games. Now, a lot of the other content creators potentially saying maybe he won't start both games. They're going to manage his minutes just so he's ready for the Champions League. But I think he's back. I think he's fit. He's good to go. And before his injury, he was playing every week 90 minutes. So I don't expect that to change. He is a difference maker in this team. So your options here, Kiwior and Saliba. But the defence, there's been no clean sheets in the last 4. And then I think 1 clean sheet in the last 5. So it's not been particularly great for Arsenal defensively at the moment. They are still the best defence in the league and they're not conceding a lot of goals. But they do still make mistakes, especially with Gabriel being out. Kyrgios's been a great sub. He's been fantastic, but just there's not really any attacking threat from that defence either. So you are hoping for a clean sheet against Ipswich, which is very likely. And then, of course, against Crystal Palace, who are a bit out of form at the moment. So you could potentially get 2 clean sheets, which would be a 12-point week for any of those defenders. So there's certainly ones to be thinking about. And then Saka is certainly one for me, who's in my team, and a good shout for captain or even triple captain this week if you've still got that chip available. Next up is Aston Villa. Now their double is a lot trickier. Newcastle at home and then Man City away. Newcastle in a great run of form since they won in the Carabao Cup final. They dismantled Crystal Palace last game week. I just feel like this is a tough run of fixtures for them. But Aston Villa are in a good run of form. Now they have just been knocked out of the Champions League, so they've only got the league now to focus on. So what does that mean for the team? What's going to happen with rotations? And there's some real challenges in here. So Ezri Konsa, Morgan Rogers have played all the minutes, so we think that they're pretty set in terms of time on the pitch. The other 4 is a bit of a mystery at the moment. Marcus Rashford has been starting the last 3 games ahead of Ollie Watkins. He's looked good, but from a fantasy perspective, he hasn't really delivered anything. Emery has told us that he's the penalty taker, the first choice penalty taker. But in the last game week, Asensio took 2 penalties, missed them both, and Rashford was on the pitch. So is he the first choice penalty taker? That doesn't seem to make sense when Asensio took 2, especially after he missed the first one. You would assume that the first choice penalty taker would then take it back off him. But he then took a second one and missed that as well. Now, Asensio obviously has a huge XG per 90 at the moment at 0.86. It's one of the best in the games. But his minutes he's not playing 90 minutes every week. Obviously, last week he got 2 penalties, which is why his XG was like 1.64 in that game alone. He was expected to get 2 goals. He did get an assist, but obviously got minus points for 2 missed penalties as well. And then you've got someone like Donyell Marlon, 0.4% owned, 0.55 XG per 90. His form is 7.3, so, second best in this team behind Rodgers. He's not been playing in the Champions League, so it's most likely to start, given that he's been rested. But that midfield and front 4 is just difficult to predict at the moment. Not quite sure where Emery's head's at. If you want confirmed minutes, go for Konsa, go for Morgan Rogers. Outside of that, it's a bit of a punt. And I'm okay with that because I'm potentially bench boosting this week. So having a bit of a punt, a bit of a differential, and someone at 0.4% owned who's sitting on my bench with 2 games, and underlying stats look really good when he's on the pitch, I just think that there's a good shout there. I can't afford Rashford or Asensio in my team with the transfers that I'm looking at doing. Rashford is obviously currently playing as the number 9, as the starting number 9. I don't know if that's going to be forever. Obviously, there's no more Champions League, so there's likely to be less rotation now. He's going to want to pick his best team to make sure that they get into those European places and try and fight for that Champions League spot, that 5th spot for this season. So this is a tough one. Really not sure where to go here. I've already got Konsa. I've already got Rodgers. I do want a third Villa this week because I just want to load up on the doubles as much as I can, especially if I'm going to be using my bench boost. So it's either moving someone like Murphy, who's in great run of form at the moment, for Daniel Marlon, or taking Isak, who's in not as great form, but then taking a real minutes risk on Ollie Watkins. It's a tough choice. We'll get to that a bit later in the video. But for me, for you, stalwarts, Konsa and Rodgers, easy picks for this week, buys. All of the others feel like a punt, but there could be points in there for any of them. Okay, now on to Man City, the last team of the 4 that are doubling this week. Ederson in goal. I read a stat the other day that he's got as many assists this season as Neto and as Odegaard. I'm like, that's just crazy. Obviously, you're not buying him for his assists, but he has got 4 already this season, which is crazy for a goalkeeper, and obviously does help. But defensively, they've not been great. They have been conceding goals. So it's a tough one to choose. And obviously, you're not just picking a goalkeeper for 1 week. You want them for the rest of the season at this stage. You don't want to be making, random goalkeeper changes. But if he's already in your team, if you're already prepped to have him for this week, I think he's a good shout. Vardial and Marmoush are absolute no-brainers. They should be in everybody's team who's still active and playing this week. Both of them are on a good run of form. Both have good attacking threat. Marmoush is obviously set as the number 9, while Haaland is out, and we don't know when he's going to be back at the moment. And then the other 2 for me, Ruben Diaz, if you want a second or defender, I think that's a good shout. The fixtures aren't great. Everton away, Aston Villa at home. It's a tough one. Villa have been in good run of form, but might be a little bit fatigued after the disappointment in the Champions League. Everton, you just don't know which one's going to turn up at the moment. They could either be really good defensively. They don't have a huge amount of attacking threat. So I just think picking a couple of defenders. And then, of course, there's the real knee-jerk of Kevin De Bruyne. He's announced that he's retiring at the end of the season. This could be the last time that we would ever have Kevin De Bruyne in our fantasy teams. And I can see him, having, of course, got 2 goals in the last week. It does feel like it's a bit of a last hurrah, obviously with the double game week. He is expensive, 9.3 million. There's not a lot of people that can have that kind of money around. But if you've got a free hit, for example, you could potentially take the gamble of having him over someone like a Salah. Him and his 2 game weeks, and then obviously just go back to your Salah afterwards. It does feel almost nostalgia. I remember the seasons where Kevin De Bruyne just absolutely tore it up. I feel like obviously he's at the end of his Man City career now, as he's announced. But it could be one last hurrah to have Kevin De Bruyne out in your team before he leaves at the end of the season. But let me know in the comments below, is there anyone else I'm missing from Man City? I just think that midfield of Grealish, Doku, Savinho, I just don't know which one's going to play. Foden, I just don't know. So therefore I wouldn't pick any of them, as I'm not entirely sure that any of them are even going to get minutes on that as well. So Man City, Vardial and Marmoush for sure. Ruben Diaz if you want to go safer for minutes. Kevin De Bruyne if you want to go down the nostalgia route. And finally, for those that aren't obsessed with double game weekers like I am, here are some of the in-form players across for this week. You've got 8 Nori. His current form is 8.0. And Jorgen Strand-Larsen has been really good form at the moment. Now, Cunha is back, but they both scored. Cunha and Strand-Larsen scored last week. So Wolves are in a really good run of form, slowly moving up and away from that relegation battle. They've got nothing really to fight for. I think they are safe now, given the form of the bottom three. Luis Diaz, he was a surprise for me when I was looking at the informed players at the moment. And Liverpool have Leicester away. It's a fantastic fixture. So if you are looking at potentially bench boosting, and let's be honest, for any bench boost that you use between now and the end of the season, you're only going to really have single game week players on the bench, because there's not enough doubles in any game week for you to have doubles on your bench. So it wouldn't be a bad shout to have someone like Luis Diaz, who's only 16% owned, in a great run of form against a promoted side that's likely to get relegated. Then, of course, there's Harvey Barnes, the guy who broke my heart last week. I was tossing up whether to go with Jacob Murphy or Harvey Barnes. And in my head, I told myself that Harvey Barnes was a doubt for minutes because Gordon was coming back. And then Harvey Barnes went and scored lots and lots of points. Now, I was quite lucky because Murphy also got me a double-digit haul. But Harvey Barnes just smashed it in both game weeks. I think it was an 18-pointer. So it was a big swing. But he's so lowly owned at 1.5%. But he's still in that great run of form. And when Gordon did come on, it wasn't for Harvey Barnes. So there is a system where they would play them both. Given the form he's in at the moment, given the form that Murphy's in at the moment, they're good to have. Brennan Johnson, 7.0. Got massively under my radar just because Tottenham have been rubbish. Yes, they're through to the semi-finals in Europe, but they have been so poor. Someone was reading a stat the other day that Tottenham have lost 17 games this season. Now, bearing in mind, Southampton have only lost 19 games this season. That's just shocking. So to see one of their players on a 7.0 form guide and an underlying stats of 0.47 expected goals per 90, and only 6.2 million, he would be a differential, but just not for me at this stage. And then lastly, up front, obviously Mateta's been flattering to deceive and not getting the points that we would expect, like he was getting before his injury. But Evan Nilsson, 5.8 million, 4.4% owned, 7.7 form, a great outside shout. And then they've got Crystal Palace this week, who have been shipping goals left, right and centre. So if you wanted to potentially take a punt and go against a double game weeker, Mateta to Evan Nilsson could be a nice little shout. But again, these for those that are looking to not necessarily having double game weekers, because all of these players will be playing in game week 34. So if you don't have a free hit for game week 34, these are the types of players that you want to be having in your team, because they'll play this week and next week. Okay, as I mentioned at the start of the video, this is the biggest game week of the season, the biggest double. We also have the widest variety of chip strategies that are going on at the moment. So over the next couple of slides, we're going to look at assistant manager, we're going to look at triple captain, we're going to look at bench boost, we're going to look at free hit. And so if you like what you see, don't forget to hit that like button. It's free to hit. It makes a huge difference for this channel. Hit subscribe if you're new around here, and hit that notification bell if you want updates of future videos coming out. But without further ado, let's get started on the assistant manager for game week 33. So last week when we looked at some of the fixtures, there were table bonuses all over the place. Almost every fixture apart from one had a table bonus. This week it's a lot more sparse, and the tables bonuses do not look exciting at all. Everton at home to Man City just doesn't fill me with joy. Ipswich at home to Arsenal, I don't see anything there. Leicester at home to Liverpool, again, I can't see Leicester getting anything there. Spurs at Nottingham Forest, again, I don't see anything there, just because Spurs have had a European Cup football midweek. Nottingham Forest have had the rest all week. I just feel like there's not much to be had there. Nottingham Forest are not in the greatest form at the moment. So of all the table bonuses, there's the best one. And then you've got Crystal Palace, who've just been thumped twice against Arsenal. Now again, Arsenal have had a big midweek win over Real Madrid. And we saw last week that after their win over Real Madrid in the previous week, that they struggled and got a draw against Brentford. So there could be a chance, potentially, for Crystal Palace to get a table bonus there. And that's why Glasner is my top choice for assistant manager this week. Bournemouth and then Arsenal away. He's got 2 games. One of them is non-table bonus. The other one is a table bonus. So for me, he's the best chance for you to get the maximum points in this game week. Next up, I've got Arteta. Ipswich away just feels like a banker in terms of just getting that 8 to 10 points, depending on how many goals they score and if they can keep the clean sheets. And then obviously Crystal Palace in a bad form at the moment. Feels like 2 good fixtures where you could just get steady between 16 and 20 points from one manager. Next up would be Guardiola, Everton away, and then Aston Villa at home. Slightly tougher fixtures, which is why he's third on my list. And then obviously I would have Emery as fourth just because he has 2 fixtures. Outside of that, as I said, realistically, if you're picking assistant manager this week, you want to be picking someone who's got a double. And for me, you'd want someone who's also got table bonus. The only one who meets that criteria is Glasner. He's also the cheapest here at 0.8 million, whereas Arteta and Guardiola are 1.5 million. So you need to have that budget available. And if you had Glasner last week, obviously he wouldn't have got you many points because they lost both games. So it is a bit of a gamble at the moment. Their form has completely dropped off out of nowhere. But I feel that that's the best chance of getting the maximum points. And of course, you wouldn't have to use a free transfer if you already had Glasner from last week. So let me know in the comments below. Is there anyone else that I'm missing here in terms of the assistant manager chip? For me, table bonus is the way to go with this, but these fixtures aren't great for any of those that have the table bonus this week. Okay, so let's have a look at captain choices this week, and for those of you that still have it, potential triple captains for game week 33. So no real surprise here that most of my choices are double game weekers. Marmoush feels like probably the safest bet. He's playing as the number 9 for Man City. They're scoring goals at the moment. He's got Everton away, Aston Villa at home. I feel like it's a good set of fixtures. It's not great. It's not the best. Next for me is Bukayo Saka. Now, there is a concern that they rest him a little bit after all of the midweek antics from Real Madrid over in Spain, but I just think that it's too important for Arsenal to not lose that much momentum. So Ipswich away, Crystal Palace at home is the best double of all of the teams that doubled this week. Bukayo Saka is the linchpin for Arsenal, the creator, goal scorer, penalty taker. So I think he is my choice for captain. And if I had a triple captain, it would be on Saka this week. Mateta obviously has the double game week, but I just feel he's been out of form at the moment. I wouldn't risk it. But of course, it is worth that shout. Just calling it out that he has the double. It will be a massive differential if you were to captain him this week. Rodgers, we've talked about him being in a great run of form at the moment, scoring goals, assisting goals, and obviously got a tough double this week with Newcastle, who are in great form, and then Man City away. Not easy fixtures. He is a midfielder, so there is potential for the extra clean sheet points and the extra point per goal. Next up is Salah, and of course Leicester away. Now, if it wasn't one of the promoted sides, he wouldn't be on this list. He's been obviously phenomenal all season and will finish by far the top scorer for the whole season. But Leicester away, you just feel that there's a bag full of goals to be had there. There is a potential scenario that Liverpool could win the title this week if Arsenal slip up against Ipswich. Then Liverpool could win the title by beating Leicester, in which case obviously they could just go and score as many goals as they wanted on that. So Salah is still on this list. It's an interesting one, obviously, because you prefer to go for the doubles and you've got twice the amount of chance of appearance points, bonus points, goals, clean sheets and the like. And then lastly, again, we talked about this already, is the nostalgia pick of Kevin De Bruyne. He's got a double. He says he's pain-free at the moment. It's his last hurrah in a Man City shirt. Can he go out and do it again? Why not? You know, he's done it so many times in the past. Now, of course, he doesn't have a Haaland to set up, but he does have a Marmoush. So it would just be lovely to have Kevin De Bruyne and see him sort of finish on a high as his Man City career. So for me, Marmoush or Saka are the main options. Rodgers, if you want to go, you know, a little bit left wing, and then De Bruyne for the nostalgia pick. Free hit game week 33. Now this was a huge debate last year. Do you free hit in a blank or do you free hit in a double? And last year it was absolutely free hitting in the double that worked. Free hitting in the blank just didn't work, and it was game week 29, and it was just the lowest scoring game week ever. This season it's a little bit tighter. The reason that you'll be using free hit this week is because you've set your team up to go from now and the rest of the season, and you want to just maximise as many doublers as you can in your team for this week. And you can fill a whole team of doublers if you're free hitting this week. But obviously that means that you're not going to necessarily have all of those players in your team moving forward. Now, right now, you probably wouldn't want Crystal Palace players moving forward, but outside of that, would you want Aston Villa players? Well, yes, they're in good form at the moment. Would you want Arsenal players? Well, technically they're fighting for the league, but let's be honest, I'm an Arsenal fan. We're not going to win the league right now, so they could potentially be rotation. So maybe you don't want to have them in your team. But it really does depend on how you've already set up your team. So I wildcarded knowing that I'd be loaded up with doublers and that I would free hit in the blank next week. And then obviously I would have my team to move for the last 4 weeks of the season. So it really does depend on that. But let's have a quick look at, if you are free hitting this week, what would your team look like? So if I was free hitting this week, my team would be Martinez and Areola. So Areola was just going to be sitting on the bench if you're free hitting. If he does come on, if Martinez gets a freak injury and doesn't play in either games, then they are playing Southampton at home, which is also why Wan-Bissaka is on my bench as well. But then you've got Martinez in goal with 2 games. You've got Saliba, Kiwior, both with Ipswich and Crystal Palace, so a real potential there for 2 clean sheets back to back. You've got Vardiol in defence as well with Everton and Aston Villa, so again, attacking threat there as well as potential for clean sheets. In midfield, you could go Sarr, you could potentially go Eze. I've got Sarr here and Eze on the bench, but you could have it the other way around for sure. They've got Bournemouth at home and then Arsenal away. And I've got Mateta for Crystal Palace, so you've got your triple Crystal Palace. I've also got Saka, De Bruyne, Rodgers, Watkins and Marmoush. So I've got a full team of doublers, and then first on the bench is Eze with a double as well. So if anyone gets a freak injury and doesn't play in both games, then I'd have a doubler coming off the bench. This is 99.8 million, and it covers all of your bases. You've got 3 Crystal Palace, 3 Man City, 3 Aston Villa and 3 Arsenal, and realistically the best options for each of those teams as well. So, and then on the bench you've got Wan-Bissaka, Virgil van Dijk and Areola as well as Eze. So as I said, if you were free hitting this week, I can't see why you'd do much more else for this. You could potentially say not have Watkins, because we don't, as I said, he's not been starting in the last couple of weeks, but I think now that they're out of Europe, he could potentially get that starting place back, bearing in mind that Rashford is only on loan at the moment, so you don't really want to upset your main number 9. But yeah, so overall this was how I would free hit if I was doing it for this week. There's no real big differentials in there, but apart from potentially De Bruyne. and free hit does allow you to potentially go a little bit different on their Kiwior. It will be lowly owned at this stage, but I think he's a great shout given Arsenal fixtures on that as well. But let me know in the comments below, are any of you free hitting this week? And if so, who have you got that is not on this list? Okay, we are now getting towards the end of the video and we're going to have a quick look at my team, and this is where we're going to discuss a little bit more around bench boost, because I am looking at bench boosting this week. So let's have a quick look at my team. Now, if you've got this far into the video, surely I'm owed a like at this stage. Hit subscribe if you're new around here, and that notification bell for updates of all of the videos for every game week between now and then the end of the season. Okay team, we seem to have stopped the rot. Game week 32 was an absolute blinder for me. 99 points and a green arrow of 419,000 places. So a massive big jump up from about just under 1.7 million to just over 1.2 million now. Now, if we did 400,000 jump each week, I'd be in top place in 3 weeks' time. Now, I don't expect that to happen, but this is the part of the season now, as I mentioned, with the doubles, with the blanks, makes a huge difference in how you use your chip. A lot of people used their bench boost last week, and that didn't work for them. If I look at my bench last week, I had Raya, Saka and Saliba on my bench, and Gvardiol. If you look at that bench, it's absolutely stacked. But between them, they got 6 points. Now, as a bench boost, that's a worst case scenario. You would want a minimum of 8 points from your bench, just for appearance points alone. And of course, you want a lot more than that, especially if you're thinking of having Saka, Gvardiol and Saliba. Now, the reason I had them last week is because obviously they've all got doubles this week and I didn't have enough transfers saved up. But the bench boost is a bit of a strange one this year, because there's been no real time when you can have multiple doublers on your bench. In previous seasons, you'd have 5, 6, 7 teams that are doubling in one game week, so therefore you could fill your bench with double game weekers. This season we've not had that. At any point in the season have we had more than 4 teams doubling in a week, which means the maximum you can get is 12. So you can get one doubler on your bench, and then the rest of your team are going to be single week game players. So with that in mind, let's have a quick look at what my team looks like for this week and my transfer options on how I'm going to maximize my bench boost. So as it stands for game week 33, I have 10 players that are doubling. So let me just double check that. Henderson, Raya, Konsa, Gvardiol, Saliba, Sarr, Saka, Rodgers, Marmoush and Mateta. Yeah, so 10 players that are doubling. So I can potentially get 2 more into my team. I've got 1 free transfer, 1.8 million in the bank. But I look at this team and it just looks good overall. Now, obviously, if I'm going to bench boost this week, I've got Henderson, who's got a double. Not the nicest double, but they does have a double, so potential there for them. Then I've got Murphy on the bench, who's in a great run of form at the moment, so I'm not necessarily unhappy with having someone like Murphy on the bench. Kanate, who's got Leicester away. So again, Liverpool could potentially win the title this weekend. So keeping a clean sheet against a Leicester side that have struggled to score, I think, 2 goals in total in their last 9 games. And they were 2 in the last game. I just think that Liverpool defence will be too strong. And then you've got Livramento as well. Again, Aston Villa away, who are in good form in the league. It's a tough one. So for me, there are potentials there too, and I might even take a -4 just to get the extra 2 doublers in my team for this week. On my main team on the field, Salah and Isak are my 2 single game week players. So I'm not moving Salah from anywhere. I want him from now till the end of the season, so he's just going to stay there. But who else could I potentially... I was originally looking at Watkins for Isak, but obviously Watkins not starting in the last 3 league games is a big concern for me. So potential transfers for this week. Given that I've got 1 free transfer, the obvious choice for me is to move Tino Livramento for Ruben Diaz. I've got the money in the bank. Livramento has been in good form, scored some goals, kept some clean sheets, I've been totally okay with him in the team. But Aston Villa as a single on a bench boost isn't exciting. Having Ruben Diaz makes more sense because he's got a double, and there's a potential for 2 clean sheets in there as well. Very little attacking threat, but at least the double game week, so at least double appearance points and potentials for bonuses as well. So for me, Livramento to Ruben Diaz makes sense. I am also then, as I mentioned, potentially moving Isak to Watkins, but I am concerned around Watkins' minutes at the moment. I don't know what's going on behind the scenes. A couple of weeks ago, Emery said he had a bit of an injury, which is why Rashford was starting up front. Rashford has been starting up front, but not necessarily scoring the goals. So does he bring Watkins back in? It's just too much of a doubt, especially for a double game week, and it's someone who's starting. So I am also potentially just going a bit rogue. It's the end of the season. I've had outstanding game week 32, and last week I wanted to go for Harvey Barnes and I didn't. I went for Jacob Murphy. I'm wondering now if I went for someone like Daniel Marlon. I can't afford Asensio. Asensio's XG per 90 is crazy. I think it's 0.85 and his assists are 0.14, so he's almost on a 1 goal involvement per game. So if he was starting both games, he's almost expected to get 2 goals or 2 goal involvements across the 2 games. Daniel Marlon is a bit of a wild card behind that. His underlying stats are good. His form is good. He didn't play in the Champions League, he came off the bench towards the end. But I feel like he could be a bit of a wild card there on the bench for 2 games. And then, as I said, for the rest of the season, he would just sit on the bench anyway as my first choice bencher. So it's a bit of an interesting one. I'm not entirely sure if I'm going to do that second transfer. It might be a little bit too wild given that I'm trying to chase that top 1 million. But at 0.4% owned, if he does get anything, especially on a bench boost, it could be massive rank rise for me. So one that I'm considering at the moment, but Jacob Murphy has been in good form, in better form than Marlon. So is it worth just losing that for the 1 extra game? Let me know in the comments below. Am I crazy for even considering moving Jacob Murphy to Daniel Marlon? So having said that, if I'd made both those changes, this is what my team would look like. At this point, I now have 12 doublers. And I've always been an advocate of saying when you're doing a bench boost, I could put Salah and Isak on my bench and then have Marlon and Diaz on the pitch. So I've got all the doublers on the pitch and all of the single game weekers on the bench. But is Marlon better than Salah? No, he's a bit of a punt. So having him on the bench is fine. Ruben Diaz, would I play him over Isak? No. Not in any normal game week, even with the doubles, potentially. So for me, it means that I've got 3 doubles on my bench. And then I've got Kanate, Salah and Isak as my non-doublers, which is a great list of non-doublers to have on that as well. So that's what it would look like if I do that. It's just, the other way, as I said, if I didn't have Marlon, I could keep Murphy on the bench and I'd have Watkins up front. I can afford both of those players. So that's the options where I stand at the moment. Do I go Murphy to Marlon, which is huge differential, but massive potential upside? Do I go Isak to Watkins? But then, of course, there's that huge minutes risk at a lot higher price. So for me, Marlon is more in form. Watkins is a higher price. It makes more sense logically to go for Marlon over Watkins. But let me know in the comments below. I'm still undecided. I do think the Livramento to Diaz feels like an easy move at the moment. It does put an extra doubler on my bench for that bench boost. But let me know in the comments below what you would do if you had sitting in my position. Finally, thank you again for watching FPL Fanzone. If you've got this far into the video, surely you owe me a like by now. Hit subscribe if you're new around here. And as always, may all your arrows be green.